So welcome everyone to the Family Exchange for the month of February. We're so excited to have you all here and to be a part of this presentation. I'm excited for Carol and Barb to share with you the information that they've put together for Building a True North, which is what our new exchange is. If you wouldn't mind putting in the chat your name and your location, that just gives me an idea of where you all are in the country, and I love seeing how widespread you all are. Gail Weiler, I have not seen you in years and years, and I'm so glad you're here. I recognized a name as I was going over those. Thank you. Just a few things to get through before we start the presentation. If you wouldn't mind going to the next slide, Carol. This is all information that most of you have seen before. We're required by NTAC, and we're so grateful for NTAC to host this family exchange. So it is important for us to go through all of the information to make sure that if there are any new people on our list today, that we are able to let you know that who is hosting and where we come from on this. The disclaimer for this is to let you know that the information that is in the slides today are not, or if they are copyrighted, they'll be marked as copyrighted. And if they're not, you're welcome to use them without permission from SAMHSA and the authors, but please cite your information and where you got the information from. This is supported by SAMHSA and as part of a financial assistance award over 5 years. And we're excited and we're happy to have you all here and have SAMHSA be partners with us in this effort. Will you change to the next slide? So just in case there is anything security-wise over this Zoom, it will be stopped immediately and you'll receive an email for further instructions. But just so you know, you did get a copy of the slides when you got a reminder of the presentation. And if there are any handouts that we decide afterwards, we'll send them along afterwards with a short survey. If you wouldn't mind filling out that survey at the end, that really does help us improve our presentations and to meet your needs. And as usual, if there's anything that comes up for you today that you would like to know more about, please put it in the chat, because I do read over all of that information as well. And it really helps me with future topics, if that's a necessary thing, or to answer any questions that you might have. Next slide, please. Yep, so this is just a little information about the NTAC, about the overview of NTAC. Go ahead, the next slide. These are the partners with NTAC, which is the National Training and Technical Assistance Center. And these are all great organizations that FREDLA is happy to participate with in the providing of training and technical assistance to not only systems of care, but communities who are trying to build systems of care. So you can see that Youth Move National is also a part of it, and FREDLA. So we're glad to be a part of and provide the family and the youth voice in this team. Next slide. So the goal of NTAC is that all children, youth, and young adults and families with emotional behavioral health needs can access evidence-based treatment and recovery services in a well-coordinated system of care. Next slide. So this is just an example of the cross sector of audiences that we serve. If you have any any people within your communities or systems of care who need technical assistance. If they're not listed on this list, please send us or give them the link that is at the end of the slides that tell them where they can go get more information if they need some more help. Next slide, please. Again, these are just the services that are provided from NTAC. They're at no cost to you to provide training, technical assistance, or resources. So if you need anything that's on this wheel of services here, please use the NTAC connection at the end of the slides and we'll make sure to get it to you. Next slide. So this is where we turn it over to Carol and Barb, who are from Kentucky Partnership for Families and Children. And we're so excited that they have agreed to participate with us and present to you. And I'm going to turn it over to Carol and Barb. Thank you.
Thanks, Lori.
Thank you, Lori. Good afternoon, folks. My name is Barb Green, and I'm the Associate Director and Carol's partner in crime for the Kentucky Partnership for Families and Children, which is a statewide family organization in Kentucky. And just a little bit about us. Thank you, Carol. You're sharing a file, so I guess that's our brochure. Carol's sharing some information with you.
Yes, it was our brochure. Sorry, I was shaking my head. I thought you could see me, but you couldn't hear the rocks rolling around. Sorry about that.
Yeah. So again, we're a statewide family organization. And so the way that we are structured is that we have 51% of our board of directors who are parents who are raising children with behavioral health challenges. Also, our staff is, we have a staff of 21, and most of our staff, probably 90% of our staff, are either parents of who have raised or are raising youth with behavioral health challenges, or youth who had behavioral health challenges that received services before the age of 18. Would take up our whole time to talk to you about everything that's going on with KPFC. So we really encourage you to look through the brochure and also to visit our website. Did you put that up also, Carol?
I can.
Okay. To check out the wonderful things that are going on. So that's a little bit about me and just a little bit about KPFC. And Carol, do you want to introduce yourself right quick and then we'll move on?
Yeah, I'm Carol Cecil. I'm the executive director here. Came into this from adopting a sibling group of 2. And so that's what brought me into this world as a parent and a parent advocate. So you ready to move on, Barb?
I am.
My cursor don't want to come find it. There we go.
All right. So when we're thinking about what we hope would happen as a result of our conversation with you all today, one of the, oh, my dogs. Oh, sorry. Carol, you want to say it so I can mute my dogs?
Yes. So the goals that we're hoping you get from today is that you'll learn strategies for helping peer support specialists and helping them better understand the system of care and all those different partners. Helping explore methods for ensuring the integrity of meeting processes, which we call gatekeeping here in Kentucky. And so if they learn some of those skills for gatekeeping, they can use it no matter which agency they're partnering with families or peer support specialists. And then, of course, the last one is how do you effectively communicate? Because you got to be able to communicate and understand all those different agencies that our families often receive services from. You have to be able to understand those different agencies, what their language is, how you communicate with them, and helping our families get what they need.
Thank you.
No problem.
So what you're seeing in front of you right now is what a system of care looks like in Kentucky. And what we advocate for in the state of Kentucky. So as you can see, there are lots of different agencies involved in this within the system of care. And we're going to go into that in a little more depth here in just a few minutes. And always, as always, next slide, Carol. As always, we promise that whatever we're doing, we are going to do it with you, but it's going to be interactive. So let's just get started straight away with that. Carol?
Yes, thanks, Barb. So when Lori asked us to do this, we train our family and youth peer support specialists because that's who we are approved to train and certify in Kentucky. We want them to be able to help families no matter which agency, no matter which door they're entering. And so to help our new folks, oftentimes they're new even to the system of care, they've received services, but they've not worked in a system of care agency of any kind a lot of times. So when we hire or train our family and youth peer support, we definitely want them to have an overview of what the system of care looks like. What you saw on the previous slide, which is Kentucky system of care, it didn't start out that big. It started out with all the players most of you are familiar with around that system of care wheel. Kentucky, though, kept looking deeper and deeper and adding more and more spots about, well, we have to have post-secondary education. We need to have voc rehab, vocational rehabilitation at the table. And so it just kind of kept growing. And so what you saw there was a pretty big statewide system of care. So just be aware of that. So we're going to start off with an activity, and I see we've got about 73 people on here, so we'll probably break into 9 rooms if we can do that, Bridget. I know I said 10, but since we don't have so many, let's go for 9. And we're going to model how you do this. So when you get into your groups, get into your breakout rooms, you'll need one person who's willing to type into the fillable form. You'll need to have one person who's kind of willing to facilitate the conversation. And you'll need one person who's willing to share what you write on your form when we all come back together, and you'll have about 10 minutes. So before I get started real quick, I'm going to go ahead and put the form in the chat box, and you need to download it. So if you're the one who agrees to do the documenting, somebody will have that. So let me add that on here.
I just saw your fingers go up.
All right, let me get everybody situated here because I like to see you while you're talking. All right. Okay, so this is the one that we did. So now we're just going to go in order of what's on our slides here. So education, which was early childhood on here, or I think early childhood comes up later. But anyway, education from littles to high school, post-secondary, and I said just high school. So with that, which group had that one? I think it was group 1. So did y'all pick a reporter?
I wrote it, so I guess I'll report.
Thank
We
you,
didn't
Shannon.
get too far.
That's okay.
That's okay.
We did pick were we supposed to pick one of the educations? Because we kind of just put them all in one, like we did
No.
early childhood.
No, it's okay.
Just
Okay.
education, yes.
Yeah.
However
Okay.
you all chose to do it. I was saying school age, but on the slide it has more than that. So whatever you all came up with, this is not an exact science.
Okay, we came up with the value to be supporting student learning, assisting educators, providing good learning conditions. And that is pretty much where we got to.
Okay, good. What are some of the services in general? And you can put this in the chat box, anybody, or yeah, it's probably going to be the quickest way is the chat box. So let's go to that chat box. So anybody have ideas for some of the services through education?
Mentorship,
Thank you.
medical,
School mental health, special ed,
Yeah.
After school
Start.
programs,
back to school, Head
Yeah.
Start,
after school.
after school. Yep.
After school.
early childhood development.
Thank you. Parenting classes, some do, yes. Okay, so there's lots of different services, tutoring, life
life-
skills, music,
Peer
peer
support.
support. Yeah, we have some schools that use sources of strength in Kentucky. And it's very much, it's not like what we think of peer support in the mental health world, but it is a peer support type program. School sports, therapy, home visiting, educator licensure, vocational training, early college, yes, assessments. Yeah, y'all got a lot. Great job. Most of the time is education. Is there
Mhm.
certain terminology or acronyms with education that you need to know? What might some of those be? Put them in the IEP, individualized education plan,
Yep.
speech and language, OT, occupational therapy. They also offer 504 plans or anti-bullying training. ECEAP, I'm thinking that's early childhood program, but I'm not sure what all the letters stand for. ESL, English as a second language. BIP, behavioral intervention plan. DARE, I assume that's the same as what Kentucky has.
Yeah.
Drug awareness, resistance education or something. FAPE, free and appropriate public education. I'm not sure what SAC is, Michelle.
The student
Least
council, student
restricted.
advisory council.
Oh, okay. Least restrictive environment. So a lot of those acronyms. So if a parent is needing help from their peer support specialist, not through the schools, but however they have been connected with a family peer support specialist, if their child needs special ed or if their child's on a 504 plan, that parent has to understand what that system focuses on. They have to understand that system might be providing behavioral health services, but that's not the mission of education. They provide that so that they can get the child to be educated. And so just being aware, families need to understand some of those pieces. In your communities, do you feel like it's family and youth driven at the very top level or more at the program level or just individual kid and family level? Saw some more acronyms, PTA, SEIL. Yep, thank you.
Mhm.
Individual kid and family level.
Family, some say system,
Family. Mhm.
family driven.
So that can be different in every school almost, or every school district,
yeah.
depending on how they do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you all. Good job. So let's go to the next one and see what we can get from that. So early childhood or child care. One group didn't get hardly any time to work on that. Did y'all have anything to report back? Keith says, nope, we sure didn't. So we're not going to go through all of these because of the time, but I want you to think, if you're trying to think, if you're working with peer support specialists who are working with families and young people, think about why this would be important. Why would they need to know the system of care, all the agencies that play in their system of care? Why is it important for them to know the language or the jargon, the acronyms, the vision and mission, the services, and where families and youth fit in? Why would that be important? You can either raise your hand, your virtual hand, and we'll call on you, or you can put it in the chat box.
It's hard to
I
be part
think
of
that,
it. Go ahead.
think that, you know, the more you know, the better you are, you know? So knowledge is power.
Absolutely.
That empowers, especially when it comes to parents and their children, you know, the more they know, the more they feel that they are a part of the conversation and not the conversation. Is
Right.
really beneficial. Thank you.
Yeah.
Mhm. Thank you. Jessica?
The importance of families knowing is so they could know if their child is actually getting the services that they need, or if they're not receiving what they need. So it's important to know, in order for them to have a voice on the team, they have to know the jargon and the services that are available.
Absolutely. Michelle?
Is that me? Because I think it's two Michelles.
Yes. Sorry,
Okay.
Michelle Abram Montgomery.
So by knowing
the services available, it also promotes self-efficacy and advocacy to make sure that the family's voice and choice are being heard, honored, and respected.
Yes, thank you. In the chat box, I'm also seeing to make sure they're aware of the programs that are available. 10-4 safety is met.
Mhm.
Be aware, important to know they can be involved in the decisions, absolutely. And as a peer support specialist, in our state, they help us navigators a lot of time, or that's our intent. Some of them can only navigate within the system they are hired in. So if they are hired by a community mental health center, then they can really only help navigate in that community mental health center. They might be able to help a family and go to a school meeting with them. They might be able to go to a child welfare meeting with them, but they might not be able to go to all the different meetings that that family interacts with. It really depends on the specific community mental health center or behavioral health system that they are hired to work in. And so it can be limiting. We have family peer support centers across the state under the Family Org umbrella. And they literally, because they're under the Family Org, are able to go to any of those meetings with any of those agencies. So it's critical that they know what those agencies do. Because if I'm having trouble in school and the school calls the police and I'm okay with that. Oh, well, call whoever you need to call. And then my kid ends up in juvenile justice or the court system. I need to understand that that was a risk I took when I agreed to that as the parent. Because a lot of people don't equate education with my child could end up in jail in juvenile justice or, with court designated worker. And so parents have to understand how that might affect. Michelle, Abram Montgomery, did you have something else to add?
Yes, and as a family peer specialist, we want to make sure that we know our boundaries so that we act as a co-discoverer with the parent, not that we are now taking the role, the place of the parent. We're not their lawyer. Being able to be a liaison, to be able to make sure that both parties understand and respect the voices of each other, maintaining neutrality at all times and making sure that our story is able to help them to understand and navigate the paths. That's the best outcome for the family.
Beautifully said. Thank you. Absolutely. And we're going to talk a little bit about how you play that middle role a little bit between people our families might be getting services from and the families.
There was another in the chat, another comment about are the cultures represented at the table in treatment or in transition, and understanding what the holistic cultural response is and being aware of everybody's culture is important.
Yes. And I think we're going to talk about that when we talk about gatekeeping in a few minutes and part of the roles of gatekeeping. Michelle said, preach it, Michelle. Also, peers need to be aware of the culture and values. Absolutely. So you can see why we do this activity. We spend a lot more time on this. This is about probably an hour and a half activity when we're training our peers, but we really, most of them have come through and have chosen to come through and become peer support specialists because their child has a behavioral health problem, or for young adults, they had those challenges and received those services. And so a lot of times they are very narrowly focused only on the behavioral health piece because that's what brought them into this piece of the world is peer support. But the reality is our families come in contact with multiple agencies most of the time, not all, but many. And so making sure that our peer support staff understand they have to help be able to support a family or a youth, their customer, in navigating. And the only way you can do that is if you have knowledge, or it'd be the blind leading the blind. So let me get through this so you can see some of those. So Barb, I'm going to hand it over to you to talk more about the gatekeeping and what we mean by that.
Thank you, Carol. So Carol has been alluding to the whole time we've been talking, and one thing to keep in mind is part of what you're hearing now is a small piece of a huge training that we do with peer support specialists here in Kentucky to ensure that their competency level is such that they really can really assist families. And I really loved, I think it was Michelle Montgomery. I really loved what you were saying, really about giving the power back to, or that's the way I heard it. Maybe I misheard you, but it was really about giving the power and voice and choice and empowering families and youth to design, to decide what they want their life to look like and to design a plan to get there. And that's exactly the role of a peer support specialist. Certainly those that we employ here at KPFC. So one of the things is, how do you ensure that you got so many different agencies? You got all these different values and visions and services and jargon and, all of the and different levels of family and youth driven understanding and utilization. And so gatekeeping becomes the focal point. And so as peer supports, we advocate that peer support people, they are process watchers. That is what they are. They watch these processes that are set forth for families and youth to gain access to services and supports and articulate their needs. And so we look at it, they have to be able to really kind of gauge, engage group dynamics and how these processes are working and how they're facilitated. And, what are the safeguards in place for the families and for the youth? Where is their voice? Do they even have a voice? Do that, And a lot of that process watching and gatekeeping above in front of all of that is really working with these families to present themselves and their ideas in a way that it is absolutely heard. Not in a mean way. I worked with some parents who thought that, cutting somebody's tires in the parking lot was the only way to get them to hear them, And I know that sounds silly, but it's very frustrating for families and youth a lot of times if they don't feel like their voice is listened to or honored or valued. And so gatekeeping is part of ensuring that. And so they're going to make sure that the process is in alignment with family and youth driven practices and principles. So that's the basic down and dirty version of that. We could do a whole training just on that. And part of the, and I don't think it's in any of our slides here, but I can't not mention, and part of this is we all have our cultures. Somebody said cultures earlier, with every one of those cultures comes hidden rules. And, a lot of times the agencies don't understand the hidden rules of the families, and the families don't understand the hidden rules of the agencies. Most of the agencies who choose to really assist our families and partner with our families operate kind of on a middle class rule system, hidden rule system. And so if families don't understand that or they're bumping up against that, then there's a lot of work to be done in just understanding what's even expected and why. So we tell a lot of providers here in Kentucky, if you don't understand why your folks are non-compliant, look at your hidden rules and compare them to their hidden rules, because they're very much different. Yes, Tasha, language is also a huge piece of that. And when we're in some of the trainings we do, we even talk about story structures, how people communicate. And we put a lot of effort into open-ended questions for peer support so that they can do a discovery sometimes, because that's where you get the information, is through a discovery, not through an interview. So that's always really big, and that's probably not in this, but I just want to throw that out there because it's just, I feel really strongly about that. So, okay, Carol, clear. Thank you. So what does gatekeeping actually look like? So one of the things that we say a role for peer support is it looks like the participants are prepared for the meeting. They know what the agenda is before the meeting. They feel like they are ready to be able to join the conversation and be heard. And we also really promote that the facilitator reviews the last meeting and the last agenda at the beginning of each. So it's a continuing conversation and not separate conversations that happen.
Barb, can I jump in real quick?
Oh, sure.
I'm sorry,
Sure.
someone, Sabina put in the chat box about non-compliant, and I just wanted to make sure people knew we're not saying that families
no,
are
no, 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 yeah.
non-compliant. We, as a peer support specialist, might hear the agencies
Yes, you are
calling
correct.
them non-compliant or resistant. And
You-
we teach our peer supports to gently challenge that through the gatekeeping process. So I just want to make sure people knew, we didn't think that. No, 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 no.
Wait, no. That's not our words. That are words that have been used about us
Yeah,
as families and youth.
absolutely.
And so we try to help professionals understand first and foremost, if it looks like a family or a youth is non-compliant, you don't have a good plan. Because good plans don't result with non-compliance. You have buy-in. So there's no such thing as a non-compliant family or youth as far as we're concerned. So also that there are limited distractions. Like a lot of times we'll see like a lot of the providers or the people who come around the table for meetings, they're busy people. And so they have their cell phones on them, and they're distracted by their cell phones, or they get into another meeting. Some of the things that, we have seen an incredible amount of things happen in meetings with families and youth, and I'm not even going to go into all of it. We can have a great conversation. If somebody wants to hit me up, we can have a great conversation about all that. But many times the group can get very distracted. They can get distracted from the agenda. They can get distracted from a personal need. They get distracted because they need to be in another place at the same time they're here. So we also really look for, is the group getting redirection when they're drifting from the agenda? It's very, very easy. I'm just speaking to my own experience as a parent of a grandchild who went through countless meetings where we tried to figure out his problems. And a lot of times I have felt like I had to kind of redirect the meeting so we could get back on topic. Also, participants need to really understand what the outcome is, and it should be a shared agreement about what the outcomes are. And then, of course, inclusion, giving everyone space to participate, having a family and youth, and this is one of the things that we teach our peer supports, is having a family and youth does not guarantee their participation. Being physically present somewhere is not participation. So really having participants, are they really being encouraged to share their truth, their dreams, their schemes, their, what will work, and to validate all of those unique perspectives that can come out of a meeting. And then, of course, the dynamics, and we talk about this a lot, seeing those nonverbal communications that go on in the meeting. And I've seen this a lot. And one of the things we do when we train is we really look at different meetings and we really tease out what are some of those nonverbal communications that are going on. And then how can we readjust those nonverbals to work for us as family and youth instead of used as a weapon. Watch for common personality challenges. All the groups, the naysayers, the know-it-alls, the idea bullies, the You know, who are those people? It could be any number of us, could even be the family. Could be a family or a youth. They can be in that too, but understanding those different kinds of dynamics and how they contribute to a meeting to either improve the outcome or distract us or sometimes sabotage outcomes. And then being willing to ask the dumb questions. That's the other thing, is just that many of our families and youth are afraid to ask questions. They don't ask questions because they don't want to look stupid. But we always encourage our peer support specialists, you be the one, you ask that question. And then ensuring that it's family and youth driven. So are they actually asking families and youth about their thoughts? Or are they assuming that they know that based on other conversations they've had? And are they asking the customer questions for clarification, or are they assuming that they're hearing what is being said? And one of the things we spend a lot of time on, open-ended questions, affirmations, summaries, and reflections, so that we can make sure that people are really hearing what each other are saying, because oftentimes we leave with different interpretations of what just got said. And that happens to the families a lot. They hear something very different. And then those areas of agreement, finding out what those quick wins might be. So a lot of what we try to get our peer support specialists to really do is look for where they could get a quick win with this collaboration and building on that success, which gives people encouragement to continue to climb whatever that hill is that they need to climb. And then just being aware when the group needs a break. A lot of times our families and our youth, we get overwhelmed. We get overwhelmed in these meetings. And I'm just speaking for myself. I got very frustrated. I mean, in my old life, in my other life, when I was very frustrated, it didn't come out well. So helping families figure out how to deal with that kind of frustration and that feeling of being overwhelmed or getting really emotional. They're talking about us and our kids. And so getting very emotional and how to facilitate needing to step back and take a break and think and regroup. And that's an essential part of having a successful meeting. And then, of course, making sure that the customer did feel heard, valued, and was empowered by the conversation that had been had. And then everybody coming out with a very clear understanding of what their role is, because oftentimes what we've learned and our peer supports tell us is that when they leave a meeting, everybody's got something to do. The family doesn't have anything to do, and it's their plan. Or the family has all the tasks to do, and they don't really have any support from the other people who are part of the conversation or part of the team, if you will. And so some agreement about and fair distribution of tasks, and that they're all meaningful tasks. And so that's kind of a snapshot of what gatekeeping might look like for peer support as we see it to be involved in those meetings. Carol, you wanted to add something?
I did. Someone in the chat box mentioned doing a prep meeting or prepping the family.
Yes, absolutely.
And so we get that we want your customer, your family, your young person to be able to do these things themselves. But a lot of times you have to help guide them to that as the peer support specialist. So if you do those prep meetings, you're meeting with them ahead of time and you're talking about, did you feel like, or after the meeting, we always talk about doing a prep meeting and setting up whatever plan you need for during the meeting.
Yeah.
And then you do a debrief meeting to talk about, were you able to share? How can I help you practice that for the next time? Or what are strategies we can use so that you can say no and not feel like you're going to have retaliation? Or you're right. If you say no, that is a decision you're making to maybe put you or your child at risk of
Yes, and-
retaliation.
Yes,
Being honest about it, but at the same time, trying to brainstorm strategies and tools for the
Right.
know-it-all. How do you
so
handle
what
the
we're
know-it-all?
doing really is we're actually trying to, we believe peer support facilitates, not tells the parent and the youth what they need to do, but we facilitate them thinking through what their best strategy and what their options are. We can't do that for them, nor should we, because then we would be just somebody else who is trying to lead them to where we think they needed to be. So we do put that in there. Usually, one of the things that we really promote is we establish codes with the families. So we have all these different codes, for, okay, we need to move on, or I need a break, or, I'm getting upset, or I don't think they're hearing me, or whatever, so that the family feels like they're truly being supported. But the role of a peer support is not to do it for, but to support the family and youth to do their own meeting. And if it's truly family and youth driven, which is what we advocate for, then that really means that the family and the youth have the most weight in the decision making, that it is culturally appropriate by the family's definition, and that everybody is in real agreement about where we need to go and what we need to do. So it's a little bit different than the traditional, and many of you who do peer support probably know exactly what I'm talking about when I'm saying those things.
Okay.
Okay.
Lori put in the chat box that sometimes the family and the young person, the youth, might be at odds about what they want.
Absolutely.
And so having some of those discussions first, and sometimes we have a youth peer support specialist who's serving the youth
Yep.
and a family peer support specialist who is serving that youth's parent. And
Yep.
for them to be able to kind of have a group discussion one-on-one first with their customer, and then maybe pulling together to help that discussion to find that common ground is very helpful. And so we
Right.
get that. And then the other thing is I saw Michelle's hand up.
Michelle?
Yeah, so I had added in the chat about helping the families being able to identify their triggers and what
Yes.
they need and how to de-escalate themselves in a meeting, because this meeting is important. What we don't want the system partner to do is shut it down because someone is now irate in their eye or triggered by what was said. Also, helping them with verbiage and letting them know, that strength-based language to use so that the meeting can flow, and, sometimes feeding language in prior to for
Yes.
the meeting, asking them, so what I would do, like with my daughter, is we did a fast forward type of situation. And with that, say, now let's brainstorm ways to get to this outcome, being
Yep.
proactive opposed to reactive, helping them to understand the difference in how they can move forward with that successfully.
Yep.
I think that's really important, Michelle. And one of the things that comes up a lot for us is, I think a lot of professionals, they will tell you that, the best way to get the best behavior out of a child is through praise. But I think sometimes we forget that as adults. And so part of what we do is teach families to be able to tease out what some of those positive of those providers are, so that they have a place, more of a place to put things, or they also understand the importance of being strength-based and partnering, as opposed to being on opposite sides. Okay, and then we're getting some more. Also, not overwhelming families with too many tasks at once, figuring out what's on top. Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. And Michelle, you raised your hand.
Yes, validation is key with our
Absolutely.
use. We have to, even if you don't feel as though what they are saying is valid or the best course for them, validate what they are saying and say, if you wanted, if you could do this differently, let's brainstorm multiple ways. Always have a plan B, C, and D when you're doing something, but validation is always first and foremost when it comes to youth and families. I'm sorry.
Right,
Yep.
you're all right. So also, and it's not on here, but also we put a lot of weight on building natural support for families. So that, because these providers and these professionals and even us as peer support providers are not always going to be there. So, and we've done, I think historically, when we've talked about wraparound services and strength-based and all of these things, the one thing I think that we have been the weakest at is helping families and youth identify a natural support system that will carry on after we're all gone, but not just building it, but actually helping them figure out how they can manage it, because that's really key after we're gone.
Yep.
So
also
somebody
got-
said yes. Go
Yeah.
ahead.
I was just gonna say, there's a lot of good comments. We don't have a lot of time. One thing I
Yeah.
noticed was Gail had put that oftentimes as you're moving to youth driven or from youth centered to youth guided or to youth driven, there definitely can be a disagreement between the parents and the youth.
That's a rub.
And so, yeah, it was for me. And if they're under 18, I wanted to listen to them, but I know where I fell as the mom.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
if you're the family or youth peer support specialist, part of your job is to help them to understand that other person's perspective. Not that you agree or disagree with them, but that's part of that job, is making sure they can kind of see different perspectives. And it's not easy. And that's why we try, if we have a family and a youth peer support that are serving the same family, you know, they can be critical and how they show their modeling to each other and how they handle and discuss things for that family. So I'm going to go on to the next slide because I know we're running out of time, Barb.
Okay. So peer support specialists, this is our kind of our bottom lines for peer support. They have to be effective communicators, have to be effective. And we talked a little bit, just hinted around at these different ways, but they really have to be good communicators. And they have to help families become effective communicators as well. Need to be very creative problem solvers. And we put a lot of emphasis on, don't just go by what's always been done. Don't stay in the box, get out of the box, throw the box away. Think of what makes sense for this family in this situation. They have to be flexible in negotiating, not just with the family, but with also the professionals that they partner with on behalf of the families. They have to be strong advocates. One of the reasons that we feel very strongly about peer support coming out of a family org is because their job is to be an advocate. So it's not like I'm being an advocate within a system that there may be repercussions. It could be treated punitively for that. So really getting that art of advocacy and teaching families and youth self-advocacy skills without injury. So advocacy without injury. And then accountable. A lot of accountability to their customers. And that really should come, this is probably a pretty radical notion, but I'm going to say it because we truly believe it. Their allegiance, their accountability has to be to their customers, the families and the youth that they're serving before their agency. Now, there's a lot to be said about what's appropriate and what's not appropriate, and I'm not even going to go into all that because we don't have time. But your real accountability as a peer support specialist is to those families and youth. And whatever you're doing, if you're not doing them justice, you're backing up. You need to change what you do. So, and those are, I mean, there's lots of things, but those are kind of our bottom lines of what we think bottom lines are about peer support.
Barb, I was just going to share in the chat box, I put the snapshot of support since you all were
Thank you.
talking about natural supports.
Yes.
And that just might be a tool you can use with your families or your young people.
Absolutely. And then, of course, troubleshooting the gatekeeping process, you know, if people are struggling to meet before the meeting, to have discussion on what you need to bring to the table with the customer's permission. That's always something. And we always promote a conversation, not just with the family, but who are those other people who are going to be in there? Because you kind of need to know what they're coming with. Encourage whoever is facilitating the meeting to kind of have the parent help create the agenda for that meeting. The partner with whoever's leading or facilitating to brainstorm what are some of those unforeseen issues that could come up as a result of this. Somebody said it earlier when they were talking about triggers. What are some of the triggers that could happen? And how might we deal with some of those things? The codes we talked about earlier, so that, you know, we're able to work with the parent and the youth to get what they need, even while they're in the meeting. And then also powerful is taking notes during the meeting. I don't know, but any of you all who do peer support, there is power in the pen. So when you sit down in a meeting and you start taking notes also, it's very interesting. The dynamic is very interesting. It kind of changes a little bit. And it allows you, even if things don't come out in the notes, to kind of recall the conversations and what happened. And then, of course, Carol, you said it earlier, just really, it's critical that we debrief with our customers and the meeting and the other participants, for example, the facilitator, so that we continually improve these encounters and these meetings as we go. So unfortunately, I think that's just about all we have time. Bridging the gap, using the OARs, we talked about that. Assisting without intruding, and building relationships, but not being in the middle of those relationships. How to create positive experiences between parent, youth, and the professionals, and we talked about that. And how do we gently challenge folks to move forward toward a truer partnership or collaboration? And then the biggie is interpreting things without judgment. What a peer support specialist role in helping the family members and the youth to better understand the professional's perspective, and for them to better understand the parent or youth's perspective, and laying judgment aside. We can't say don't judge, because we're human and we all judge, whether we want to or not, but laying that to the side, to be able, and a good friend of mine, TJ, who's no longer with us due to COVID, that he used to say, postpone judgments for understanding. And so we really try to promote that. Okay, so we've left very little time, unfortunately. So do anybody have questions or comments?
Lori, how much time do we have for questions and comments so we can make sure if we're done, we just,
Very little.
you're muted.
About 5 minutes.
Okay, so we do have
Okay.
time for that then.
Cool.
All
So
right.
we can do a few.
So
does
if you want
anybody
to,
have questions or any comments that they want to offer, and you can unmute or put it in the chat box.
but raise your virtual hand, please, so we can find you.
Yeah, so yeah.
Thank you, Nicholas.
Thank you. Thank you, Jessica.
And I think when, I'm just going to add on to this since we have a few minutes. So when Barbara's talking about postpone judgment for understanding, we understand that a lot of times when we're talking about the providers that are sitting at the table with that family. But let's face it, we can also be judgmental,
Mhm.
and the family, your customer, can also. Well, they're educated, so they think they're better than everybody. Well, let's talk.
And I
Maybe-
think when you put judgment aside and you're the one doing it, you're modeling it not only for the parents, but you're also modeling it for those providers who need that help as well.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Modeling the way is a huge part of peer support. So Michelle had her hand up.
And also, like, if you have the opportunity to talk to the system partner beforehand, like, you want to bring it to their attention, you know, your role is not to save this family. A lot of times system partners come in and they have this Moses mentality, but you can't come in and fix a family if they don't even know that they're broken, if that's the case. And then they wonder why there's a lot of resistance. I think building relationship is the first thing, because people will listen to people that they know and trust. Don't
Yep.
come in and say, oh, I've been assigned to your family, you got to do X, Y, and Z.
Yes.
No,
yes,
you
yes.
come in and say, if you would allow me to help you, how can I help you? Like Max Goodwin off of New Amsterdam, right? I love him. And the thing is that helping them to understand that this is a journey, you know, we are co-discoverers with them. It is their destination, regardless to whether you agree or not. So if you know you do have the opportunity, try to help them to remember that role, because sometimes they forget because they do it for so long and they feel like privileged, for a lack of better words to say, in the position. But just, you know, like you say, gently bring them back to what their role is and how to support the family, and making sure that their roles, their voice is being heard, honored, and respected without shame, blame, or judgment. I love this meeting. Thank you guys.
Michelle, I think
Oh.
that's very true. And one of the things that we really, we didn't talk a lot about, but we actually promote is that we are not our titles. We are not our titles. Sometimes you can be in a meeting and by the time everybody gets through talking about what all kinds of titles and acronyms they have behind their name, there's no time left to talk about what's really important. And so we always instruct our peer supports to say, if people start handling titles, just to kind of just say, oh, okay, and what's your role with this family? Just to kind of keep us back, bring us back to what is the purpose of this conversation, not who are you?
Even when I'm in a meeting and they ask, you know, well, what are your letters or what is your title? I say MOM. Those are the most important letters at the table today.
Yep. Yep.
Yes.
Roxanne, I like that idea of leaving your titles at the door. That is
Yep.
awesome.
Yes,
Perfect.
absolutely.
Perfect.
And we also encourage setting ground rules. We didn't talk
Yep.
about that today, but with our peer support. So
Yep.
if you're going to meetings and there's a lot of people stepping on each other's toes, talk to whoever is the facilitator about setting ground rules for that meeting. And what does
Yeah.
that look
What is
like?
gonna
And what does
allow
it feel like to
Yeah.
be safe
Right.
and to share?
So
And
we
so-
have just a few minutes left, and I have a couple of slides left to get over. But
Okay.
if you have any comments or questions, or you want to continue a conversation with Carol and Barb, they have left on the next slide, if you would please, their
got it.
contact information. So when you get a copy of these slides, you'll have this information to do just that. And thank you, Carol and Barb, for your wonderful presentation. A lot of great
Thanks.
comments in the chat, and I am very pleased with everybody's participation today. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next slide, if you wouldn't mind. So next Wednesday, on March 29th, we have a presentation on kinship care, and it is how to engage with some of those who are raising our children by matter of court or by matter of family dynamics or whatever, but it's just called kinship care. And so I'm very excited about that. If you have registered today, you're registered for the entire series, and you'll get a reminder with this link again, be able to get in next month, and it's on March 29th. And so next slide, please. So just again, thank you for attending. We'll send some of the resources that came through on our chat. We'll send those out with the slides again. And thank you, Bridget, for being our tech advisor today. Yes, thank you, you rock. And there is that short survey that comes at the end, and she's also put it in the chat here. So that really does help us improve our presentations to you. And one more slide, I think. So this is the information from NTAC. If you need to email them, or if you want to look at the website and see what other trainings are available. And also if you need to request technical assistance, all of those things are on this slide, and you'll get a copy of that when you get the slides as well. So thank you so much. Again, Carol and Barb, you're awesome. Thank you for all of your help today. And we look really forward to seeing you all next month. Okay.
Yeah.
Have a great day, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.